get it in. Does to Smith. Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it!
Brooks casts a three and puts it in. And now the emotion comes out from Dillon Brooks.
He ain't quiet anymore.
Brooks ties his season high with 26 and puts Houston up 5.
We are here to Field Rockets News. This is the Rockets Field Podcast. Of course, I'm your co-host, Lachard Binkley. You can always find me on Twitter X at Binkley Hoops. And of course, you can find all my written work over at the Dream Shake, our SB Nation. And before we get into tonight, last night's big win for the Rockets, I want to give my co-host a chance to introduce himself.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Vator. You can find me on the X app, formerly known as Twitter, at Vator Sports. And you can also find me on Instagram at Vator Sports.
Of course, you just saw Dillon Brooks closing the door on the Memphis Grizzlies last night. That was his return visit to Memphis for the first time since signing with the Houston Rockets. Of course, the Rockets already played Memphis twice. Both of those were in Houston. And the Rockets came away with the victory after trailing by 17 earlier in the game. That is the Rockets' biggest comeback victory of the year. And that was actually Memphis' biggest blown lead of the year as the Rockets won 103-96. That was a second road win of the season, second straight road win after starting the season, pretty much actually losing every single road game before they now went on a 2-game winning streak on the road. Dillon Brooks was the star of the game. He finished with a season-tying high 26 points, and as you saw, he hit that big three at the end of the game. He also had a big steal and the assist to Tari Eason that completely put the game away, and the Rockets, like I said, were able to pull that victory out. It was an ugly game for the most part. Like I mentioned, the Rockets trailed for pretty much they trailed the entire first half, did not take the lead until late in the third quarter. So it was definitely another one of those ugly games. They had one of those ugly games against Memphis the game before. But again, at the end of the day, like I always say, when you look back in March and April, hopefully leading to the playoffs, you look back and look at these games in December, all you care about is whether it was a win or not. So if it was an ugly game, as long as it was an ugly win, I think that's what the Rockets really care about. But, Vader, I want to kind of get your opinion on the overall game. Another thing we're going to talk about a little bit later is kind of the elephant in the room right now. That's Jaylen Green's play. We're going to talk about, should we be concerned? Should we give him more time? What exactly is going on with Jaylen Green, and is it something that can be fixed? Because we all know his contract extension is coming up really fast, so we're definitely going to talk about that later on the show. But for right now, I want to talk about last night's game and want to get your opinion on what you saw, Vader.
So I made a comment, I think, last week that like the wins have not really been like aesthetically pleasing, but the fact that we're winning is exciting because like they're finding different ways to get it done. The offense is clunky at times. I think Şengün kind of right now is slumping a little bit offensively. Also a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Green was inconsistent before, and now he's kind of in a slump on top of the inconsistency. Yeah. But like one thing that is like very consistent about this team is the defense. Like they bring the defense, they bring that attitude every night. They bring physicality. Like even last night against Memphis, where they started out really slow. And it looked like I was like, oh man, we're about to get blown out and ran off of this court. You know, this team really isn't a good road team right now. But Udoka made some adjustments. He brought some guys in. The intensity level picked up, and they just got gritty, man. They got down and dirty. Yeah. Dillon Brooks kind of like did not want to lose this game, and you could tell that from the onset. Like he was like super focused. He had like this laser like assassin. Like cool, calm, collected mentality. Yeah. You did not see very much emotion from him until the very end of the game when he hit that dagger 3-pointer. And like he just went in there and he knew what he wanted to do, and he was very surgical about it. And I think he kind of carried the rest of the team up to his level as far as the intensity. And even before this game, you saw big games from guys you did not necessarily expect to get it from. Tari Eason had 2 career games in a row right before this one. The previous Memphis game, you saw both he and Jabari Smith Jr. put 20 and 10s up. And so like I love the fact that we're not relying on one person. I would like for the guys that we were hoping would be stars to become stars, but in the meantime, I think Emi Udoka has brought something that's very, some intangible things to this team that you can't really necessarily quantify unless you've been here like the rest of us, and you've seen the lack of these things the past few seasons as far as like mental toughness and the ability to play through adversity and things of that nature. So I'm pretty happy with the win. I know Memphis isn't a world beater by any means, but we have a stretch coming up against some playoff teams, and it seems like the Rockets kind of play up or play down to whoever they're playing. So I know we have a game against the Bucks on Sunday, and so I'm hoping that they rise to the occasion. I know I saw Giannis score like 64 points and go berserk because he didn't get the game. Well, I don't know how we gonna fare against the Bucks, but like I think the Rockets will show up. Hopefully we get like Amon Thompson back and Jason Tate back so we can have some bodies to throw at Giannis. But like anyway, like I think it's a good win, and hopefully they can like build on this. It's a 5-game winning streak. When was the last time we had one of those?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the Bucks is so Dillon got his revenge against the Grizzlies. I know some people were like, it's not revenge. He was, he liked playing. No, he likes playing with his teammates. But I guarantee he was not happy with the front office. He actually mentioned that during the press conference. Like, I want to make sure I never lose to the Grizzlies and let them know that they made a little mistake. And that's definitely a shot at the front office who, put out that report. Somebody in the front put a report that they had no intentions at all of signing Dillon Brooks, which I've never seen before, which is just kind of crazy. So he definitely still has, a bone to pick, rightfully so with the front office. But this is also a revenge game for the Rockets going up against the Bucks. Not to go too far off on a tangent because of Brook Lopez and him pretty much pulling a Chris Bosh on the Rockets at the last second when the Rockets thought they had a deal in place. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how Apper and Şengün goes up against Brook Lopez. Like you mentioned, Şengün has struggled the last couple of games because Memphis has a lot of long, lanky type of defenders like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Bismack Biyombo. And I mean, people don't realize Bismack Biyombo been in the league for a while now. He's not going to fall for the fakes. He's a really smart defender, and that's the thing that Şengün tries to do against other defenders is try to do the pump fakes, try to get them off their feet, try to get around them that way. And Bismack Biyombo just doesn't move. It's almost like back in the day. I don't know if people remember. Of course, he's not as big as like Mark Eaton would do against Hakeem Olajuwon, where he just wouldn't move. Hakeem would do all these different fakes and all these different moves, and Mark Eaton would still be standing there. And that's kind of like what Bismack Biyombo, and also Biyombo is really athletic. So I think that has a lot to do with why Şengün has struggled the last couple of games, and we'll see he's on against another good defender, Brook Lopez, so that'll be interesting. But back to this Memphis game, another thing I want to talk about is the bench. Jeff Green again. I mean, Jock Landale, let's be honest, Jock Landale's been pretty much not existent for pretty much all the season. So Jeff Green, I think people thought Jeff Green was just going to be like a locker room guy, another veteran that can. No, Jeff Green has been a huge part of the rotation so far. And even though he was 3 for 9 last night, he was really aggressive. He helped the Rockets cut that lead from 17 down to 8 before the starters came back in. So Jeff Green has been huge off the bench. Of course, him, Aaron Holiday. Tari Eason didn't have a career night, but again, he was aggressive. That's the thing I like about Tari Eason. Even when he's not scoring, he's going to do something on the court that's going to help the team. He's going to either get a deflection. He's going to go out there and get offensive rebound. And that's what you have to do, especially as a young player, because you're not always going to score. And this is what we're going to talk a little bit about with Jaylen Green later. You have to do other things besides being a scorer. And Tari Eason of the world and Jeff Greens of the world, even when they're not scoring, they're making winning plays. And that's why Coach Ime trusts them so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like even the first Memphis game of this back-to-back, he came in, he didn't play the whole first half, and like the game looked like it was slipping away. And I feel like Jeff Green kind of came in and stabilized the game, even though Tari Eason was kind of going off. I think Jeff Green, if he doesn't play that game, I don't know if we win, because he brought, like, while the game was in balance, he brought like just like I said, a stabilizing, a calm hand. He knows what he's doing offensively. He knows what he's doing defensively, and I think that even though it doesn't always show up in the box score, it's just something that he brings a quality to this team that they desperately needed. And I think, obviously, Fred VanVleet has brought that as well. I know it's not always pretty. He's not good at making layups. Sometimes he takes some ill-advised shots, but his point of attack defense, just him being tough as nails, him being willing to take big shots when other guys may be shying away from him. I mean, somebody has to shoot it, right? And so like, he's a guy that like if Jalen Green is not gonna do it, I think he and Dillon Brooks are like, okay, well, I'll shoot it then. You know what I mean? And somebody has to do that. You can't rely on necessarily Tari Eason to do that because he's a good spot up 3-point shooter, but I don't think he's going to do very much for you off the dribble. As far as getting that, I think Jabari's still kind of coming into his own. And speaking of Jabari, props to him, man, because his rebounding has really improved drastically. And I think even his defensive effort has improved drastically. And he's had some moments where he's been overmatched from a physical standpoint. You saw that with Jaren Jackson Jr., but he was out there bumping that guy, competing. And I think as we see his physical development over the years, as he gets bigger and stronger, I think we have a player in him. And I was a little worried, at points last season because we thought he was going to be this 3-and-D guy coming in, and he was like neither of those things. He was like neither of those things at the beginning of the year, but now he's that and more. Like he has a mid-range game. He's starting to do a little bit more off the dribble. His passing is better than I thought it would be. I'm pretty happy with Jabari's development right now. As far as like the young guys, I think like I mentioned earlier, Tari had 2 huge games in a row going into last night's game. And then we still haven't seen Amin Thompson yet, man. I would love to get Amin Thompson some consistent minutes on the floor so we can see what we have with him. And then, of course, we got that monster down in the G League who had, I guess his shot selection is not that great right now, but I don't know, man. We might have something in Cam Whitmore too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, it's always hard to tell the G League, and I watch a lot of G League basketball, probably more than most people. It's always kind of hard to tell, like, because we saw the same thing with Daisha Nix, where he was having monster games, especially in the playoffs, that when they were heading to the championship, and it doesn't always translate to the NBA because you're playing a lot of guys that would never play in the NBA. No disrespect to them, but it's just the truth. But you can tell some things translate regardless. Athleticism translates regardless. Aggressiveness translates. You can't always base it off of just them scoring 40 points in G League. But some of the stuff, like I said, like I just mentioned, does translate to the NBA. And it'll be real interesting. Cam Whitmore is going to get his chance, whether it's going to be this season or next season. If they clear out some of the other players that they have at the forward position, he's going to get his chance. So it'll be real interesting with him. And I think that Amin will probably be back on Sunday. I think he was pretty close to playing this game. So I think you will see Amin probably playing against the Bucks on Sunday. But real quick before we move on to Jaylen Green, because I definitely want to talk about that before we end the show. I want to talk, like you mentioned earlier, a little bit about the defense. It's just that how big of a turnaround the Rockets have had in the defensive area cannot be talked about enough, because they went from dead last in defensive rating last season at the bottom when it came to points per game allowed. And I know they played a lot slower pace this year, so sometimes points per game is kind of hard to judge. But at the same time, you can see the defensive intensity is just insane compared to where it was the previous 3 seasons. And I think I saw somewhere where this would be one of the biggest turnarounds in NBA history as far as defense from one season to the next. Now, this season, they're like right behind Minnesota in defensive rating. They're the number 1 team in the league in points per game. And you can contribute that, to the entire team, but really it comes down to M.A., it comes down to Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks, and then Tari Eason and Jae'Sean Tate off the bench. And, of course, like Jabari Smith and players like that. But those are like the main guys, especially Fred and Dillon. A lot of people don't talk about Fred, but Fred is like one of the toughest defenders at the point guard position in the league, even though he's only like maybe 6 feet tall. I'm not even sure if he's 6 feet tall, to be perfectly honest with you, because I'll stand next to him and I'm around 6'5", 6'1". But anyway, he's a really tough defender. So those guys have made a huge difference, and that's why you can win games last night where you're not scoring, the other night when you're not scoring. Because if you play hard defense, a tough no defense, you will always be in the game, regardless if your shot is falling or not. And that's something. That's why I think that the way the Rockets are playing right now, I think they can make the playoffs because they're not dependent on one guy going for 30 or 40 every single night. And we know that sometimes that guy can go on a slump. They're not dependent on having superstar type players. They're dependent on their defense, and that's why it can translate to the rest of the season.
Yeah, so like one thing that we always talk about with defense is that defense travels.
Yep.
Like defense travels, and by that I mean like you can play the same level of defense at home that you do on the road, because like most of what defense is just knowing your responsibilities, performing, what's expected of you, and effort. You know what I mean? And your effort is something that you can control. Like your effort is not relying upon whether or not you're shooting hot, or if if this guy passes you the ball. There's a lot of outlier things that happen on offense that and a lot of them aren't in your control. But like one thing that you can each control individually is your effort level on defense. And if coach does not see that, he can take you out. And speaking of that, like shout out to Udoka, because one thing that we keep talking about, and one thing that he is doing is he's holding these guys accountable. Like if he does not, if you're not doing what he's expecting you to do, especially on the defensive side of the floor, he will take you out and he will put another guy in. And that's something that we, especially last season, that's something that we were calling for. It kind of felt like Alperen Sengun was the one guy who was being targeted and picked on, and maybe that wasn't the case, but it just kind of seemed like he was the guy who was always being like, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, and he would get subbed out. Whereas some of the other guys, you could also see that their effort level and they were not where they were supposed to be, but they got to remain in the game. So Udoka is not playing favorites. We as fans may have our favorites, but I could tell you just from a coaching perspective, it appears that Ime Udoka is not playing that game at all. Like if you're not gonna, if you could be averaging 25 points per game, but if you're not gonna like give him what he's expecting you to give him on the defensive end of the court, you're gonna be sitting on the bench until you go back in and like show him something different. And so I think that's made a huge difference on this team as well. Just because these guys know what the expectation is. And when you know what the expectation is, at that point, it's kind of on you, right? It's kind of on you to, make sure that those things happen when you get on the floor. Nobody can control you. So, if you're supposed to be, in help, you're supposed to be in the gap, you're supposed to rotate, wherever you're supposed to rotate to, and you're not doing those things, if you're not giving those second and third efforts, if you're not going after loose balls, then come sit down right next to me, big guy, and I'm gonna put somebody else in the game who's gonna do those things, because minutes are a premium in the NBA, and there's a lot of guys on the bench, and like I said before, there's a guy down in G League who I know wants minutes. I know that dude is a dog. He's hungry. He has a mentality of, when I get on the court, I'm gonna do what I need to do. As far as like getting shots up, we want to see that, on the defensive end of the floor, and also him just learning how to make better decisions. I'm talking about Cam Whitmore, by the way. But, you see like Dillon Brooks, like he's talking about as far as defense. We knew he was going to bring something very special, a special quality to this team as far as like defensive mentality and toughness. And I was very curious to see how that would rub off on guys like Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr., who I know I felt like had, some, all defensive team qualities and hopefully ability in the future, but like maybe they just don't know, they don't have that veteran around them that can kind of show them the tricks of the trade. And you brought like in the perfect guy, right? He we had concerns about him on the offensive end, but I don't think there were very many concerns about him on the defensive end. And then there were obviously the trash talking concerns or whatever, but like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like when I grew up, and I think a lot of y'all grew up, like trash talking in basketball is fine. It's just those.
Absolutely.
You want guys out there who's competing at a high level, who's willing to do whatever it takes to win, and within the confines of the game. You don't want guys out there like kicking people and choking people like Draymond Green. That's not what you want. But like within that 94 feet, and as long as you're not doing anything that's going to get you flagrant fouls and get you suspended, like I love that. And I think Dillon Brooks has brought like a toughness. I think Jabari's defense just looks way better to me. And I don't know. And Jeff Green is also a guy who I know like can help them with that. Jeff Green is an underrated defender. We talked about him a little bit earlier as far as just what he brings to the table offensively and defensively. But I just feel like adding guys like that to the puzzle. Tari Eason's on-ball defense just looks so much better. Like he was always really good help defender, a good rebounder last season. But it seems like even his on-ball defense has taken a step up, and I don't think that is a coincidence, man. I think it has a lot to do with Udoka, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you brought in Jeff Green, Dillon Brooks, and Fred VanVleet.
Yeah. I mean, again, it all starting to fit together. And like you said, it comes down, Rockets are, I mean, who would have thought it? The Rockets are a defensive team. That is their identity. That's something that MA is going to preach and continue to preach throughout the year. And like you said, if you don't play it, then you'll end up on the bench. And that kind of leads me to our final topic of the day before we wrap up the show, and that's Jalen Green. I think we're both kind of the same way, where we don't go too far one way or the other way. We've seen some people that say Jalen Green's a bust. They need to go ahead and trade him for a bag of chips. They need to get him out of here. Then we've seen some people that be like, Jalen Green still can be a superstar. He's great. He's this, no matter what he does. So I think we're kind of in the middle where we're still waiting to see exactly what Jalen Green's going to be, because I've said at the beginning of the year, it's going to be a little bit different of a transition. Yeah, it's year 3. We know people like Anthony Edwards, he's compared to a lot, had their big jump in year 3. But Anthony Edwards also had a lot more of a stable lineup. And this is the first year that Jalen Green's really having a stable lineup. But at the same time, that can only go so far, because of some of the stuff we're seeing from Jalen really has nothing to do with anybody else but himself. And kind of just looking through the contract that he has coming up, of course, the Rockets have the qualifying rights for him for the next club exercise right for him. They exercise that right early in the season. They have it again next season where they can exercise his $12 million contract, which of course they'll probably end up doing. But then in 2025, that's when he'll be a restricted free agent, and the qualifying offer is $16 million, and that's when he can possibly get offers from other teams, and that's when the Rockets at that point probably have to make it. They may even make a decision before that. But kind of going back to this season, Jalen Green has had now several games in a row where he has struggled on the offensive end. And we know that Jalen Green, even though he has gotten better as a playmaker, that's not necessarily his strength. Or his strength is not necessarily on the defensive end. So if he's not scoring, when he struggles, it stands out a lot more than when Jabari Smith struggles, because Jabari Smith is still, like you mentioned, giving you rebounding and giving you on the defensive side as well. So I want to get your opinion on Jalen Green. What have you seen from Jalen Green? What do you want to see from Jalen Green? And are you concerned at all that maybe this is what Jalen Green's going to be? A player that can sometimes go off and have really great offensive games, and then sometimes he kind of just fades into the background. And when you fade into the background, especially on the defense end with MA, he's going to take you out, and you're not going to be playing in the fourth quarter.
All right, so my feeling about Jalen is kind of twofold. I'm disappointed with the way that he's played. I'm not yet discouraged, and by that I mean I haven't given up. Like, I know a lot of people have basically written him off, which is fine. Like, I was talking to people yesterday, and like I understand. Like, some people is like, I've seen enough. Like, he's not that guy.
Yeah.
He does not have that it quality. And a lot of it has to do with maybe his approach to the game, his mentality. And then, like you said, like, if you're not scoring, what are some of the other things that you're able to contribute to help this, to help the basketball team win? So I get it, right? I feel like I've seen enough of Jalen when he's at his highs that I still believe that he can be a very, very good player. And I'm going to, at this point in time, trust the process. I think that there is I mentioned this last night after the game, I think there's going to be a process of tearing down Jalen Green's like bad habits. It's almost like you have to start from a foundational level with him. Even though this, like you said, even though this is his third season, and this is not me making excuses for him, I think that the criticism is warranted because, like, this is as a number 2 pick in the draft, as a guy who came in saying, I think I should have been the first pick in the draft. I want to be an all-star. I want to be this. He came in talking big. He set his expectations very high, right? Himself.
Yeah.
So I'm not who am I to tell other people like, hey, your expectations of Jaylen Green are too high. Like you need to chill out. You need to relax. Like you need to, whatever. If your expectations are still holding him to, I think this is a guy who's going to average 30 points per game one day. Then yeah, you are very much probably out on Jaylen Green right now. But what I'm saying is, we saw the structure of this team. We saw the way this team operated the previous 2 seasons. So I don't think this is an authentic third year for him. I kind of feel like this is more of a second year for him as far as his development. Like, I don't think he was developed properly. His first year, he played a completely different role than he played his second year. The accountability was not there. Like we said, he wasn't being taken out of games when he wasn't giving effort on defense. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And Udoka comes in, and he is like very particular. Like I was watching this interview that Jason Tatum had the other day where he talked very glowingly about how Udoka helped him to become a better basketball player. And so I think just watching that video, I think Jaylen Green is going to go through a growing pain process of where Udoka has coached him very, very, very hard, very tough. But I think that he also coaches him with love. He sits him down, after games, and they go over stuff. They go over stuff on the airplanes. You see him talking to him all the time during timeouts. So there is a process here, and he is holding him accountable. Like we've seen him bench Jaylen on multiple occasions recently, and I'm sitting there on my couch and I'm watching the game, or I'm at the Toyota Center, I'm watching the game, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I see what he's doing. Like, this is a good benching. Yeah. Jaylen needs to go sit down and then reflect on what he's doing and come back in and fix it. Because how do you get better? Do you just do you just throw a guy out there and just, ignore everything that he's doing wrong? Or do you like take him out and coach him up and then put him back in? And so we saw a lot of that even last night. Jaylen started out the game very poorly. Like the first quarter, I'm like, oh man, here we go. And he benched him. I think he came out like halfway through the first quarter. And I was wondering if he was going to put him back in. And when Jaylen came back in, he played a lot better. It still wasn't perfect. He still didn't look good. But I think, like I said, it's kind of early for me. I think if he still hasn't figured out towards the end of the season, I'll be more concerned than I am right now. I think right now it's just the fact of, hey, and you hear Udoka talk about it in the interviews when you guys ask those tough questions, and he answers those questions. I've heard him say Jaylen Green needs to be more assertive. I've heard him say Jaylen Green needs to make the right play no matter who's on the floor. I've seen him say Jaylen is thinking too much. He needs to just if it's a good shot, it's a good shot. If it's a pass, it's a pass. He needs to go out there and play basketball. Udoka knows what needs to be done, and he's in Jaylen Green's ear telling him everything that he needs to do. And at this point, it's kind of on Jaylen Green, right? It's on Jaylen Green to find whatever it is within himself and take to this coach, and then go out there and perform. Because at the end of the day, nobody can do it for him.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I am. I'm willing to give him the rest of this season. And I think the Rockets are definitely willing to give him the rest of the season because they've invested heavily in him. And I don't think that they're completely out on him right now. But let's make no mistake about it. This is MA's roster. Now, Rafael, of course, is still the general manager. But if MA says, hey, just like he did with James Harden, I don't want James Harden here. They didn't bring James Harden here, even though the owner wanted him. I'm not sure about Rafael because Rafael was, like, of course, really involved with the whole Harden trade to begin with. But the owner definitely wanted him here. But Ime was like, I don't need him. I don't need that type of player here for whatever reason. He wanted to go the direction he wanted to go in. And so far it's paid off. So saying all that to say that this is Ime's roster. If he feels that Jaylen is not the guy, let's say next season or into the off season, then I would not be shocked if they start to explore moving on from him. But I don't think the Rockets are there yet. I'm not there yet with them. I've seen enough flashes to where I'm like, okay, if he does this better, more consistently, he can be a really good player. Maybe he never becomes a superstar, but not everybody needs to be a superstar. And maybe this is the type of team that doesn't necessarily, at least for now, to where the phase at right now, where they need somebody to be a superstar type player. So maybe he's just a really, really good player, and they have to eventually bring in somebody else. But for right now,
you know what, Lachard? One of the things though with Jaylen is just I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of it is coming down to, can he make shots?
Yeah.
I don't mean to simplify it to like the simplest form, because basketball is more complicated than
Yeah.
that. But I've seen him improve enough defensively to where I'm fine with his. I feel like his defense won't be a liability in a playoff situation if he's locked in. I've seen him make better passes this year, like passes that I hadn't seen him make in any other
Well,
seasons.
but
Right, leading
let
up
me
to.
ask you real quick now that it come down to making shots. Do you think he has the mentality? Like we always talk about Tari Easton's mentality, where he's going to go out there and, like he said himself, he's a dog. The coaching staff are dogs. Does Jaylen Green, in your opinion, have that mentality to where he can go out there and no matter what's going on, he needs to take over a game? He's taking over a game. Do you think he has that mentality, or is that something that you can learn, or you just have to have it?
I've always felt like you had it or you didn't have it, which maybe that sucks. And when I'm talking in regards to Jalen Green, because I thought he had it coming into the rookie season. The way he talked, he was very brash. He's probably overconfident, right? Like he said some things like his rookie season where you were like, oh, we got to get this dude some media training, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't know, man, he lost that spark a little bit to me. And they also, like, they didn't entrust him, at the end of game situations. But we saw, like, the times when he was given the opportunity to perform at the end of games, he usually did okay.
Yeah.
Like he hit those big shots against the
And the
Grizzlies.
Lakers.
He hit the Lakers shot. He hit a shot last season against the Cavaliers, I believe it was, before Jabari hit that game winner. Was it the Cavs? I forgot,
Yeah.
but the big, it was. I don't think it was the Cavs, but he hit a shot right before Jabari Smith hit that game winner, and like he's performed in the clutch before, but it's almost like they haven't given him a lot of opportunities to show what he can do in those situations. So I'm like, maybe they know better than we would know, based on what they're seeing in practice. But I always thought, like, either you have that it factor or you don't have it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I thought that he had it coming in. And now in year 3, it seems like a little bit of that luster has been worn off, as far as like, because he ended his rookie season and he was like, I'm a bucket. Like, I learned this year, I'm a bucket. I can do,
Yeah.
I can pretty much go out and get a shot whenever I want to get it. And I don't know if he believes that anymore. I know he looked like this summer he dedicated himself back to it, like, getting himself right and playing basketball instead of like doing all the other, extracurricular stuff. You got to make the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
But his shot making is just it's not there yet. When you look at like even guys who aren't like good 3-point shooters, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and guys, like, they're just good at making shots. They're good at getting to their spots and knowing where their spots are and making shots. And right now, I don't know where Jalen's spots are, right? I don't know where he's trying. I don't know what he's trying to do from possession to possession. I'm honestly, I'm a little like, these are some things that I'm concerned about, but I'm also, like I said before, I'm encouraged by the fact that I know we have a head coach. Like, if anybody can get Jalen Green right, it's going to be Ime Udoka. Like,
Yeah.
we have the coaching staff in place. Like, if anybody can get his shot, his shot fixed or his shot, more consistent, I think it's Ben Sullivan. So, like I said, I'm gonna give it, towards the end of the season before I say anything, more definitive. Right now, I'm a little concerned, but I'm not completely out on Jalen Green just yet.
Yeah. I mean, same here. I think we're on the same page. It'll take him some more time. You got to realize he's playing with an entirely different type of point guard now. Entirely different offensive system, to where it's not a lot of running up and down. The Rockets are not a fast break team. They play at the slowest pace in the NBA. That's a total change for him.
A lot.
Yeah.
And he would benefit a lot from being able to get out in the open court,
Yeah.
with a guy like Amin Thompson and get some transition baskets. Like, he might be a guy that needs to get going, like get him some easy buckets, and then the rest of his game opens up. And unfortunately, we're playing like this, and it's by necessity. I'm not saying that this is Udoka's fault, but like, we're playing like a slow down, grinded
Grit
out
and grind
kind of offense.
Grizzlies from back in the
Yeah, we're playing a lot of half court basketball,
Yeah.
and like right now, I don't think that is conducive. And like I said, not to make excuses for Jalen Green, he has to go out there and make shots, especially the open shots. Like he misses a lot of like open shots, but I also, like I said, I don't think he's in rhythm. He's not really, confident in his shot right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hey, if Jaylen Green does shake that in, so like at the beginning of the year, people were kind of critical of Jaylen because he was inconsistent.
Yeah.
But he was still putting, like, if you looked at his overall averages, he was still like at 20 points per game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists or whatever. And his shooting percentage was decent, right? And now things have tailed off. I think he just finally dipped, right? I think he's like 17.8 now. And his shooting percentage is going down because he's kind of in a tailspin right now. Okay. But it's one of those things, man. We're just gonna have to see the process through, and we'll see how he responds. I think we're gonna learn a lot about Jaylen Green in the upcoming months, for sure.
Yeah, and that'll help the Rockets make the decision, because they will have a decision coming up in the next couple of seasons on, do they want to stick with Jaylen Green, or, because let's be honest, even if he continues at the same trajectory he's at right now, he's going to want that max contract. Whether he gets it or not, that we'll find that out later on. But that's what he's going for in the next couple of seasons, once the Rockets don't have that exercise option to keep him at around the $12 million at right now. He's going to want definitely more than the 12 to 16 million they're going to be paying him in the next 2-3 seasons. So Rockets going to have a major decision coming up. But for right now, at least for this season, the Rockets are definitely exceeding expectations at 13-9. They take on the Bucks on Sunday. Before we wrap it up, I definitely want to thank everybody for the support. We blew past 1,000 subscribers since we've been on the air last time. We had 1,050 and climbing. We definitely appreciate the support. We want to continue to bring you that great content all season, exclusive content. So make sure if you're not subscribing, you're watching this and you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button. Make sure you hit that like, because we all know how the YouTube algorithm works. The more you hit that like button, that definitely helps us get out those videos and you're able to actually see them on a daily basis. So we definitely appreciate the support that you continue to give to us every single time we're on the air. And as usual, I want to thank my co-host Vator for jumping on the show with me today.
Thank you, man, and keep those interviews rolling in, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely continue to get that stuff out to you, and let us know in the comments, what do you think of the Rockets season so far? What do you think of Dillon Brooks? What is your opinion on Jaylen Green? Do you think that he has basically the it factor to take that next step to get up there with the young guys like the Tyrese Halliburtons and the Anthony Edwards of the world? Do you think he has it, or do you think that this is what Jaylen Green is going to be, what we've been seeing from him the past few seasons, especially the past several games? Let us know in the comments. And as usual, we appreciate the support, and make sure you check out the next episode of the Rockets Fuel podcast.